I'd like to call to order the Wyoming Charter School Authorizing Board meeting for February the 5th, 2025. Can we say the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Elaine, you want to call roll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Cindy Delancey.
Here.
John Masters.
So I've got Doug on the phone with me, Elaine, and he says he's blocked and unable to talk, and wondered if you could do something to help that situation. But I'm here.
Okay.
And indirectly, Doug is here.
Okay, so we'll say Doug Chamberlain, and I have asked him to unmute, so maybe that'll help.
Yeah, I don't know if he thinks that's the problem, but I told him his phone showed it was muted.
Can you do *6?
Can you do *6, Doug? Doug?
Alan Buss?
Here.
Fred Von Ahrens?
Here, present.
Madam Chair?
Here.
Joe Filer?
I sent him a text. I don't know whether he's attending or not.
Steve Lupian?
Excused.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes from January the 16th and January the 20th, please?
I move to accept the minutes from those two meetings.
Thank you. Can I have a second? Don't be shy, everybody.
Madam Chairman, I haven't had a chance to review them, so I don't want to second it. So.
Okay. So you're not going to vote for me?
True.
Anybody want to make a second?
I'll second the Madam Chair.
Okay. Are there any changes or additions to the minutes? All those in favor of approval of the minutes from January the 16th and January the 20th, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Those abstain, John Masters. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any changes to the agenda?
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
My notes showed that we were going to discuss the impact of raising or removing the cap on charter schools at the next meeting. And I didn't see that on the agenda. Is that?
Well, you have something called the Executive Director Report and Legislative Update.
So shall we discuss it at that time, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Madam Chair, can you hear me now?
Yes, Doug.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. It's all screwed up, but I'm just pulling into the the Veterans Hospital. I'm up to be parked in the parking lot. So.
Yeah. All right. So first item on the agenda, did we vote on the agenda? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? We have an agenda. First item is federal funding sign-off designation for the executive director. John Waller, do you want to give a brief explanation of what this item is, please?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I've been working really closely with WDE to get title funding out to at least one of our schools. And we thought that it was something that I could just sign off on. They've completed their application, been approved, but it actually does require board action. I checked with Mackenzie about this. And so what he recommended was probably the quickest way to do that would be to just designate me in that role. Right now, that's the reason we have to have the special meeting. They're being held up because of this. And I've looked through their application and I follow that stuff pretty closely. But basically what you'll be doing as a board is saying that in those matters relating to title funding, that I would be able to sign off on behalf of the board.
Any discussion or questions? John Masters?
Madam Chairman, I move that we authorize our executive director, John Waller, to be our designated person to sign federal funding application and reports.
Second that,
Who was second?
Alan.
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Great. Moving on to the Executive Director report and legislative update. John Waller.
All right, Madam Chair, thank you. I just have a number of things. I sent you guys a report of some things I've been busy with lately. I've just some highlights here that I want to talk about. I think I mentioned in an email last week. I am always at that Capitol at the Capitol on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. So if you ever need me to talk to anyone or check into anything, please let me know. I'm going to start sending out updates. They're just brief updates on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Some things are very applicable to us and very relevant to us. Some maybe not as much, but I want to keep everybody up to date. So I will, if you can just always look in your box on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I will always put important or read now if it is something of an urgent nature. Otherwise, just on your time. I just want to keep you up to date. And so I wanted to report on that. And I already have one coming out to you tomorrow, just kind of telling you what I'm hearing when I'm over there. I want you to know that 2 of our schools are currently under corrective action with special education department. And we are working together to provide them support and training. I've been asked to join in those sessions. I joined in one yesterday. I just want to keep a real close eye on what we're doing, see if there's any way I can help support those buildings. They're procedural things many times, but what I am very interested in doing is getting them the training they need, getting their paraprofessionals the training they need. And so I'm pretty involved in that right now. Tomorrow, I actually meet with John Balo. He also has offered help and support. So wanted to keep you up to date about that. On Monday, Carrie and Haley invited me to Charter School Kids Day at the Capitol, which seemed like a great activity. Legislators came in, we ate with kids, board members, principal or headmasters, and it was I feel like made a really good statement on behalf of our group and our efforts on behalf of charters. And I really appreciate those guys getting that organized. Good food too. Saturday, we spent the whole day. It was Elaine and Sean McInerney and I and Gina and Heather. They from NACSA spent a whole day reorienting me to the you guys orientation that you did. I asked about 150 questions. I think we really put together a blueprint for where the committee needs to go, where I need to go, where the WDE needs to go in those positions. And it was just a really, really productive day. So I am so appreciative of that. Wanted to announce we did get the.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Please do, and everyone else feel free to as well. Yes, ma'am.
At our March meeting or whenever our next meeting is, it was too late to add to this agenda. John will be taking us through what the roles and responsibility breakdown is between the WDE and him and our board.
Yes. Yep, and that's on the agenda for our retreat, actually. So thank you for adding that, Madam Chair. We did get I'm getting organized with our finance committee, and we have our first meeting next Wednesday. I'm excited. I think I've heard from all but one that are able to come to that. We're going to talk about that a little bit today and let you see the agenda for that if you have any input. I want you to know that I'm working pretty closely with WDU right now. Elaine and I meet, we meet every single week and kind of lay out plans and delegate responsibilities. Dickie Sheener now has joined us as Sean McInerney to really bolster our efforts of working together. And so I'm very appreciative of that. Those are two separate meetings. And so I feel like we're getting a real direction and focus right now on what needs to be done. And I really appreciate those meetings. I wonder if we had a public records request. Someone had requested the Alpine Charter Agreement, the signed agreement, and Mackenzie let me know that we will need to have a person designated for that, and that falls in my lap. So we're working on how to formalize that, but I'll be the public records liaison. I did pass along that information. Of course, we know that's public information, so pass that along. And then tomorrow also I'm meeting with a member of the WD. I want to learn more about the accountability processes, and Elaine's going to be in that meeting as well, just talking about what is the expectation from the state as it relates to accountability, and then how does that then translate to our schools and our accountability system. So just a couple updates on things I've been up to. Let me stop there before I do the legislative update. Questions from the board or comments or anything you guys would like clarification about?
Cindy?
Okay.
Thank you.
Cindy, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Great update, John. As far as the meetings and the understanding of who is doing what as between your role and Elaine's role, like when will we see that work product? And will the board have any opportunity to kind of see that, chime in on that, make sure that that's the right division of duties, or making sure that everybody's helping and supporting each other? Just, do you have a sense of when that might be available for review and comment?
Yeah, thank you. No, great question. We're planning on presenting a draft copy of that at our retreat. It is in draft form. We certainly want our board's input on that, and they are actually included in it as well, because it will designate what is the board's responsibility, WD's, executive director. And what I want to do is come forward with that and get you guys input. This sounds good. I'm wondering if this is something we should do. That will definitely be in draft form. Once we have a discussion and get consensus, then we'll kind of formalize that. We did kind of interesting process. We took the Title 21 and we put it through an AI thing to kind of spit out what are the actual duties. And so that's a starting point for us right now. And then we hope to come, well, we don't hope to, we're going to come to the retreat with that information and get input from all of you.
So John, would it be inappropriate to maybe forward it so that you could receive input along the way, or do you feel that it's necessary for you to have a more final work product, or what?
No, I think that's actually a really good idea. I'm going to commit to, let's make sure we do that. Send it out. I'll send it out at least a week in advance of our retreat, because I think it'd be really good. Then you guys can look at that, take notes, give any kind of input you have, and then we will finalize that at the retreat. So that's a really good idea.
Chairman, perhaps I missed, but when is the new retreat date?
We're going to talk about that. In 2 items.
I don't want to get us derailed, but I really would like to. I think it would be helpful to us, John, to see this more than just a week in advance of the retreat.
Okay.
I don't know, Madam Chairman, if that's kind of where you were going, but it just feels like, we're building a lot of things together, and it just, I think it would be helpful. I mean, we're so happy to have you on board, John, and just to kind of help everybody get acclimated on who's on first on a lot of these things. I think is the sooner we can do that, the better. So thank you.
That's great. No, I will try to get it to you quick then.
Madam Chair.
But let me organize my mind around that. I'm just wondering about input then back. Do we wait till the retreat, or we just start doing that right away? I just have to think about that a little bit. But no, it's great input.
John Masters, I see your hands up.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. John, you mentioned that you were working with a couple of the schools. It sounded like they were, not quite sure what the term was that you used, that they were not in compliance, I think you said. Could you
Corrective
expand on that a little bit for me?
Yeah, it's not uncommon for a school to go on corrective action. The liaison went in and did some visits, and then came back and said, "Here's some things that we really need to improve upon." And and that's not uncommon. I've seen that my whole career. What I want to make sure we're doing is providing the support, because, as you know, you guys are well aware, they're very isolated, and so in a big district, you call somebody across town and say, "I don't know how to do this IEP," or "I've got a kid that moved in," and so I feel like, and then we're meeting weekly. We met yesterday. We're meeting again next week, and just talking about let's talk about the situation. Let's talk through it, and I feel like we will move them towards the where we need to be right now. The other thing that I thought was really valuable, they have done a training now with the 2 schools. I was not part of that, but actually a formal training with the teachers and the paras to get them up to speed with the expectations here. So I'm going to be following that pretty close. I was also excited. John reached out to me and he said, I want to know how we can further support you guys in this effort right now. So
To follow up, Madam Chairman?
Sure.
I did, you said somebody had made an examination. Who was that? You used an acronym, I think, and I didn't catch it.
it was a liaison from WDE.
So WDE is doing this, and you're working now with the schools on our behalf as the LEA, correct?
Yeah, and I just feel like I in this role, I really need to keep a close eye on that, because compliance issues are important, and then I want that in. I also want to provide the support that they need, and I'm happy that we're doing intensive support, meeting every week and talking things through. Yesterday was very productive.
Okay, so to follow up with that, are you participating in the meetings with the parents and the child as our representative?
No,
I think that's required of us, and as an LEA, I think we're supposed to have a representative at those meetings. So that might be something that we need to be on top of as well.
okay.
And this also seems to me to be one of those areas where your role as representing the board versus the role of the department as the, well, for lack of a better term, the auditor of the process, need to be clearly delineated, I believe.
Okay.
I think the LEA representative has to be there to discuss the resources which are available for the needs of the child.
Okay.
And I realize that wasn't necessarily done particularly well in the past, but part of the reasons that we have you now is so that we can improve that.
Yeah.
I think. So.
Well, let me, I may follow up with a phone call with you. I'll get an answer to that question.
I'm not trying to put more on your table.
No, and you're fine. I'm great with that. I am following it really closely, and I feel like it's really important that I'm following this one.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Anything else?
I just had the legislative update when you're ready, Madam.
Before we go to legislative update, kind of on that, Madam Chairman, is there a way that perhaps Mackenzie, John and Mackenzie can kind of flesh that out as far as what's required and who's doing what to make sure that we are meeting any kind of requirements that either
I would suggest it should be John Balo, Mackenzie, and John Waller, to make sure that our LEA position is being represented appropriately.
Madam
I
Chairman.
don't want to exclude John Masters in that though, because he obviously is interested in this topic, and I think that as many eyes as we can on this is to our benefit, Madam Chairman. So I don't want to speak for John or anything, but I really do agree with you that John Balo, since he has entered the discussion in a supportive role, could share a lot of his knowledge and expertise with us as well.
Madam
John
Chairman.
Masters?
Yeah, can I suggest that last year we had a summary from the WDE of the LEA activities and responsibilities, and that would be at least a starting point. I realized it was a very high summary, but let's make sure that John gets a copy of that, and I guess Elaine would probably be the best source for that. I think it was probably incorporated within the minutes, but I don't recall for sure. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Madam
Anything
Chair,
else?
can you hear me?
Yes, yes, Doug.
I wanted to ask John Waller, in our minutes of the last meeting, we passed a motion to have the WDE introduce legislation about the transportation costs being reimbursable in the first year for charter schools. And I just wondered what the outcome of that was.
Well, I will answer that question because we don't know what the outcome of it is. WDE did not draft legislation. Senator Driscoll did, and it is up as a budget amendment on the floor this afternoon, and I don't know what the outcome of that is. It hasn't been heard yet.
So it's going in as an amendment?
An amendment to the budget, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that works fine. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? John, you want to move on to legislative update?
Yeah, Madam Chair. Of course, a very busy place right now. As I mentioned earlier, and I want to give an update at a retreat, but there's lots of legislation. Some will have, minimal impact, some very major impact on with our mission as the authorizing board. I'll start with the appropriations discussion, and I know our chairperson has been keeping you guys in the loop about that. There was something introduced to keep the ED position and maybe move it under a different, I could just read from it if you want. In the appropriations committee, it says of the other funds appropriation, $163,000, 500 will go for one at-will contract position for the Wyoming Charter School Authorizing Board. It is the intent of the legislator that this appropriation be included in the standard budget for the Department of Education for the immediately succeeding fiscal biennium. This appropriation shall not be transferred or expended for any other purpose. And so that is one that has gone through. The House has not, as of last night, I had a discussion last night, they have not taken action, but I'm hearing that they're going to, that there is going to be something related to this executive director position. Janine, do you have any more current information about that?
I do. It's in the same position as the previous one that I just spoke on, and that it is a budget amendment that is up on the floor this afternoon. Okay. I think it's 2012 or something like that. And I think the one on transportation is 2022 or some amendment numbers. So yes, it's being worked on, but we don't have an update on it yet.
Okay.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, John.
I think I heard 163,000, and this would be an AWAC, which would mean John would lose some or all of, well, maybe not all, but some benefits. For example, I think health insurance for spouse might not be covered, things like that. Have we had any, well, maybe I should say we, has anyone had any discussions with people in appropriations about the impact upon John? And perhaps, John, you could chime in. Have you had any discussions about that?
I think the answer to your question is yes, we have had conversations ad nauseam, and this is, I would say, not about John, but it is about process. I'm watching my words, Mackenzie. It is about process, and I think we just need to watch it go through appropriations.
So would this be would this mean John would be a part-time position, or the executive director would be a part-time position? Or
no, it would be a full-time AWAC position.
But at a substantially reduced salary? Somewhat
reduced, yes.
And
it would be at the top of an AWAC.
My recollection from last May or whatever it was that A&I went through and scored what they thought this position represented in their hierarchy of jobs, and that's why the salary range was established where it was. And now it looks like there's been a change without a change in any of the responsibilities, which seems to me we'd need to reevaluate whether we could have a full-time executive director in that event.
As I suggested,
yeah.
This one is had a lot of discussion in a lot of offices. Cindy, help me here. I think this is better than one of the other alternatives that got thrown out there. We are watching this space, and It is, I would suggest to you, and I have suggested this to some other folks as well, is that it is quite inconsistent with some of the other legislation that is going on. For example, opening the, or shutting down the moratorium on the number of charters that can be applied for. But at this point, I think I certainly have spoken ad nauseum with people about this, and we're just watching it where it goes. I don't know what else.
Well, let me express my concern because I think it needs to be in the public record. And we had 2 applications last year. With the removal of the moratorium, I don't know how many we'll have, but in my experience, and I don't know what it was for others, I probably spent about 10 hours on each of those applications reviewing them. And then in addition, we made a fairly lengthy and I suspect very costly road trip where we had our meetings with the applicants and then we had public meetings following that. And I would guess, without having any better information, that we probably spent $20,000 just in our travel and per diem for those 2. Now, we don't have very much money in our budget, if any, at this point, and I don't know what they're going to do with our budget, but the removal of the moratorium, it seems to me, will place a tremendous burden on this board if we don't have a full-time, well-compensated executive director who can do an awful lot of this heavy lifting for us. And even then, I would expect that each of us will be spending at least 4 or 5 hours per application just in doing our own homework, for which we don't get compensated other than the $75 of preparation per meeting fee. And I'm not complaining about that. I knew this was a volunteer job when I agreed, and I think we all knew that at the time. But I just wonder if, well, I'll just express it. I think that the legislature, if it's not very careful, is going to make this board uninhabitable. And that would be a pity, because I think we do important work, and I think charter schools are very important. And in order for us to do our job well, I think we really require the assistance of somebody with John's expertise. And probably we require quite a bit of assistance from each other, perhaps by splitting up some of these reviews into smaller groups. I don't know, but this could be a very heavy lift for us going forward. And if it becomes unbearable, I don't know what will happen. I think that I've heard from some members of the board that if they don't know fully what's going on, they vote against it. And I think that might be a position that we'll be in, where we have applications that have not been thoroughly reviewed, and we don't know sufficiently what the details of each application are. And people might feel compelled to vote against very meritorious applications just simply because we haven't been able to properly process them. So I hope that those thoughts are being conveyed to the legislators who are in whose hands we rest, and they understand that that we want to do our job and we want to do it well, and we want to have charter schools succeed. But it's going to be very difficult if they tie our hands. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. That will be noted in the record.
Thank you.
And your sentiment has been shared. Cindy?
Madam Chair.
Doug, Cindy had her hand up first. Can we go to Cindy and then?
Go ahead.
Sure.
happy
Go
to-
ahead, Doug. Doug, go ahead.
Oh, you want me to talk?
Yeah.
You know, I have a little experience with legislative intent, and it would appear to me that possibly some of the intent behind this sort of thing of us having reduced assistance and more work to do is for us to pretty much rubber stamp these applications rather than go into them in detail.
I'm not sure that's what I'm feeling right now on that one, honestly, Doug. I think it's more political in nature.
Well, that would make it pretty political, in my opinion.
Cindy?
Thank you. I just wanted to share with John Masters that pretty much verbatim, every word that you said has been conveyed to the decision makers in this process many times. And I think that, again, we just need to trust the process, and then wherever the process lands is how we go forward. So they're debating the budget today and tomorrow. So if for those of you that are interested in seeing how this shakes out, today and tomorrow would be a really good day to participate in legislative viewing.
Fred?
Madam Chair, we were just successful in fighting for positions for the state engineer on water. To Board Member Delancey's point, should we send some notes as individuals? I know we can't do it as a board, but is there anything that you would recommend we send to specific legislators to help them in this matter?
I'm going to defer to Mackenzie on that one.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that last part.
He wants to know if we should send letters supporting the position to folks on the Appropriations Committee and in the Senate right now.
The guidance of McKinsey, the guidance I have from the state board is, as an individual, we're citizens that can send letters to our legislators.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly can do that as individuals, but in that case, I don't know that that's a discussion that the board necessarily needs to have. That's something for each of you to decide on your own.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that.
John Masters?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You know, I think, and again, I don't want to be redundant, but one possible outcome of these actions will be that we'll need to assess the full administrative fee in order just to cover our travel and per diem expenses. And, you know, we don't have but 4 schools authorized. That could be a substantial burden on those schools. And they would be essentially underwriting new schools. If we had a larger population base in terms of number of students in schools, that might not be such a burden, but I fear that this is the type of thing that will really fall hard on our existing charter schools, in addition to us. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, John. John Waller?
Okay. Thank you for the discussion. Just a couple other updates here, and I'll end with the big one there. The Senate Bill 131 was the one that would currently, if there's a building available in a charter school and it's in good shape, I can't remember the terminology here, but the charter schools would be obliged to move into that school, and that's a problem because they've spent a lot of time and money, and that is they introduced legislation to do away with that. Let me just read it real quick. Repeal the requirement that charter schools receive reimbursement for leasing expenses if the state construction department determines there is no existing adequate educational facilities. And that did pass the Senate. It's headed to the House. That, of course, has implications with our Cheyenne Classical, because with the restructuring that's going to go on in Laramie 1 right now, they were worried at where they're going to put us in one of these buildings once they vacate them. And so that had a lot of support, and it's moving forward, I think, in a positive direction. The bill we had 73 that allocated central office resources back to charter schools also is on a good path right now. It passed the Senate on a 28-3 vote, and it's on the 3rd reading in the House for introduction. And that's just they hold back administrative money, and our schools aren't able to take advantage of any of the services. So that would go back to the schools to the tune of $40,000 to $60,000. So that was a positive development. The big one, of course, is the House Bill 94. That's the one that would remove the cap. I'll read it here. It would remove a limitation on the number of charter schools that the Wyoming Charter School Authorizing Board may authorize, making conforming amendments and providing for an effective date. That passed the House on a 45-16 vote. It's being introduced in the Senate right now. Big implications. There has been discussions about moving the date back. It would be effective March 15th of this year. So we would quickly be dealing with applications. And so we've had discussions about, is there a way to move that timeline back so we get more time to get organized for this, perhaps even to July. But but that is also moving at a pretty good clip. And John, to your point, John Masters, I don't know, what I would be open to a discussion about what we want to do and what our stance wants to be on that bill right now.
John Masters.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think our rules have a window for application. And as I recall, it's February 1 through the end of February. So if it became effective March 1st, we would be looking at, I think, 11, 12 months from now when we would have a batch to handle. Am I correct on that? I don't have the rules in front of me. Am I correct on
I
that?
don't believe so. I thought that the rules recently got changed in order to, Elaine could speak better to it than I can.
Elaine knows. Yeah, Elaine can speak that one.
Madam Chair, Mr. Masters, so the rules are currently with the governor's office and it is an open window of March 1st. But for this year, we put a stipulation that it was March 1st through March 30th or 30 days. And I'm not saying the correct verbiage, but 30 days after the governor signs them or that the rules take effect.
Okay, thank you. So let me, I don't want to interrupt John if there's more, but I have one more question for you. If you,
Yes,
at the end.
please.
Go ahead, John. John
So
Waller.
my question, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
Well, no, I'm done with that. I
Okay.
wanted to open up the discussion with you guys.
So,
John Masters.
thank you, Madam Chairman. As I recall, there was some discussion early on of whether charter school legislation would be an interim study topic. Does anyone know where that discussion has gone and whether, I mean, I realize it's premature and they make those decisions towards the end of the legislature, but is that still on anybody's radar?
It's on mine, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I do believe, so when I spoke on the central office funding bill, I think we had agreement from Senator Rothfuss and somebody else that this really needed to be done. So I think that the topic has been introduced. I think it's on their radar, sort of. And I think what's going to happen is just, I mean, I don't know how familiar people are with interim topic, but everybody will be asked. The public will be asked. Anybody that wants to submit interim topics has the ability to do that. And I would suggest we as a board would do that. In fact, perhaps I would like a motion that from somebody, because this is going to happen, that will need to happen before our next meeting, I believe. So can I have a motion that we put together something, John?
Madam Chairman, I would move that we offer to, I think it's Management Council, whoever it is, the idea of an interim study topic on the charter school legislation as a whole, knowing that we have our own specific issues that, well, I'm editorializing. I'll just stop there, ma'am. Thank you.
How about, can I add a little piece to what you said?
Sure.
As it's basically laced through any other education legislation or statute.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. I would certainly offer accept that.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, Doug.
Madam Chairman, on the idea of interim studies, unless the rules have been changed, that request would have to come from probably the WDE. Otherwise, you'd have all kinds of requests coming to the Management Council for interim studies. And I think they prefer those come from departments.
Madam Chairman, if I could, I think Doug is on the right path here. It's not that we'd be making the request, John, to Management Council. It would be to the Education Committee. The Education Committee would then take that request to Management Council if they determined that that was a priority for them, which I would imagine that it would be. So we're all on the right track here, but just procedurally, the request would come from us as a board through you, Madam Chairman, and then it would go to the Education Committee. Education Committee would discuss, and then when Management Council requests the priorities, Education would determine if it moved on to Management Council.
I'd certainly accept all of that as a friendly amendment.
Yeah,
Can I-
Madam Chairman, that's a good explanation. I just didn't get it clear enough. I appreciate that, Cindy. I do have one other question.
Well,
And
Doug,
that is
before you,
in-
Doug, you need to hold because I'm looking for a second here to John's motion first.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. All right, Doug.
Madam Chairman, this is Brenna Harris. I'm sorry to interrupt, but would you mind repeating the motion just so that I can have it correct in the minutes?
Should I do that, Madam Chairman?
Go ahead, please.
Sorry to interrupt, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I move that on our behalf, you suggest to the Education Committee that a comprehensive study of the Charter School Act and its impact throughout the Education Code be undertaken in the current year.
Well stated. Thank you.
Thank
I
you, Mr.
second
President.
that.
Any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. All right.
Madam Chairman, one other thing.
Yes, John.
I think the minutes should reflect that Steve Lupian joined us, and I noted that I think it was about 3:15 he joined us. Maybe
It was,
Ian
it was
already picked that up.
about 3:11. I apologize. I did put a note in the chat to mark the time specifically. So if you go back and look in chat, I am there.
Okay,
All
great.
right. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Welcome.
Now,
Anything else?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Doug.
the other question I had, somewhere in the materials I thought I read, or maybe it was in an email, that a legislator made a comment about when we're talking about financing for charter schools, that they had access to other money than state funds. Did I understand that correctly?
I would suggest that I think that there is a belief out there that some of our charter schools have access to donor money.
That's what I was afraid of, and to me, in my thinking, that's a minefield we ought to really look into, because commingling of donor money with public taxpayers' money and all that sort of thing, I think could really get complicated, and I'd defer to Mackenzie if he has any thoughts.
Well, Madam Chair, I mean, I don't want to get too far over my skis here, but you know, these entities are nonprofits, and they do have the ability to receive donor funds, and there is a question, and I don't know the answer to this, about whether once the funds are in their possession, they continue to be considered public funds for our purposes. And once they're in the possession of a private entity that is essentially granted the funds and able to use them, obviously they have certain things that they need to fulfill according to their charter contract and any other grant agreements that they need to fulfill. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the funds continue to be public funds once they receive them and are using them for their to fulfill their various contractual obligations. So that's something worth considering. But I don't know that I can necessarily give a definitive answer on that right now.
Doug?
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. I think that is detailed, and if, with your permission, Madam Chair and the members of the board, maybe I could talk to Mackenzie about it off air and pursue this a little bit further. I have some concerns. I think John Masters maybe, and I have talked about that also.
Great. Thank you. John?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I circulated, I believe, maybe 8 or 10 or even a year ago, a little article about a charter school application in Oklahoma that was submitted by the Roman Catholic Diocese to establish a charter school. I think it was a non-denominational school, but it was going to be sponsored by the church. That case resulted in a decision against the Roman Catholic Church. and on this same concerns, I think that Doug is expressing. But it is now pending in the United States Supreme Court on appeal. I don't know whether the Supreme Court will, I think they've taken it up, so I think we will get a decision, but it could impact Wyoming and in fact all the states. So we may want to watch that as well, Madam Chairman, and I'll commend that to McKinsey for his consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm aware of that case and I am following it. At this point, there's nothing in particular to report. It'll be some time before briefing is complete in that case. I'm not familiar with the due dates, but I would anticipate it's possible it could be argued sometime this year. And we may get a result as early as June, but we'll see. But in those particular cases, that really has more to do with it's not so much the character of the funds once they are given to the institution that is receiving them. It's the fact that they start out as public funds and they are being given to a particular type of institution. It's a subtle distinction, but one that I think is important in this discussion.
Well, Elaine, please note in the minutes so that we keep this on the radar. Thank you. Can we move on now to Finance Committee update? Mr. Waller?
Yeah, I just, Elaine, are you able to project that so everybody can just see I just wanted, I sent out an agenda and I wanted to just kind of let everybody know what we're thinking about for this first meeting. Do we have that, Elaine, that we could? And I want to thank John Masters. I kind of called and picked his brain for a lot of this, so.
It was slim pickings.
Yeah, I couldn't find anybody else. No, I appreciate your help. So this is what we're thinking about for our first meeting. You know, some of the formality stuff, getting a chairperson and a secretary set up, roll call, figure out how frequent we're going to meet, and then when we'll report back to the board. I think it's really important that we keep them up to speed on what this group is doing. Possible topics, school audits that we are now receiving from our 3 schools, development of a board budget, administrative fee structure for new charters, legislative updates, salaries. There's a whole breadth of things that I think could really fall under the purview of Finance Committee. I want to make sure my personal goal for this committee is that we prioritize what is important and pending right now. And then we just take a look out, in 6 months, what's going to be important. And then that's how we prioritize our work. So we also I want to build in a process that if we need documents or reports that I can meet with Trent and get those and have those available for that committee. And I met with Trent, is very willing to do that. I just need to give him a little heads up on what we're going to need and to look at. So that's just a quick overview of what we wanted to cover in this first meeting. It's next Wednesday from 3 to 5.
Could you put down on your agenda also, I'd like to know what is the status of the audit for Prairie View?
Yeah, and I actually have that. They've secured someone. I think I read that it's going to take them a couple months to do it. I'll get back to you on that one though. So,
thank you, John Masters.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And this is a question for McKinsey, if I may. As we meet in these committees, which constitute not a quorum of the board, are these public meetings, and should we be doing these in a public setting, or are these things that we can do offline and simply report the results of our work in a public meeting?
Madam Chair, so long as these, and I forget the exact language, but as long as they're not a meeting of the board, which include a quorum, then they are not required to be publicly noticed or allowing the public to observe those meetings. So you can have those meetings as necessary without those particular restrictions.
Madam Chairman, could I follow up?
Sure.
McKinsey, would it be appropriate for us to invite the public to submit topics for us to consider? I mean, is that appropriate, or is that beyond the pale here?
I think you should maybe wait until you get rolling here because you got a lot of backlog to work through first, John.
Well, yeah, but I thought we might want to understand the nature and breadth of our work. at some point.
And Madam Chair, I'll just say that's not something that the law necessarily touches on, so I put that in the full discretion of the board.
Thank you.
Cindy, I saw your hand up.
The point was covered. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on the Finance Committee? That
Madam
leads us to
Chair,
the- Yes, who is
this is Alan.
Alan.
Not on the Finance Committee, but I need to run over to our administration building for a meeting with the provost. So I've sent Elaine some of my availability for days for the retreat and for the final items of business. So
So
I
before
may
you
be
run,
excused.
can I ask a question of you?
Please.
Next item on the agenda is application committee appointments. Because NASCA wants a subcommittee of the board that they can work with to try and make changes to the application and the application process as we're moving forward. So that we have, and so I was thinking perhaps you and Fred might want to be able to do that.
I'd be willing to serve in that capacity, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Fred?
Alan.
What's the time period?
I'm not sure. But it would basically be NASCA is going to take our application, they're going to contrast it against applications that they have and hopefully come up with a better application that
Okay.
makes the process more efficient.
I'll do that. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, that covers the next one. So now we're on the retreat.
Okay. Elaine, do you want me to take that one, Madam Chair?
Pardon me? Yes, can you?
Okay. Yeah, Elaine, are we able to? Well, let's first of all talk about date. We have two possible dates. Elaine, can you jump in here? We need to decide that first.
Madam Chair, we spoke with NACSA and they would be available if it was going to be a weekday, the week of March 24th. And if it was a Saturday, it would still be within that week. It would be March 29th would be the next available date, if any of those dates will work for the board.
How do people feel about doing it during the week versus on a Saturday?
That makes it more difficult for me.
Fred?
Actually, on that week, I could, well, I may be at Rocky Mountain Power, but I might have a commitment on the 24th, but the weekends tend to be better for me for an all-day meeting.
Okay.
Where would the meeting be at? Do we have a location?
It would be at
Probably.
LCCC here in Cheyenne.
Okay. The 20, I'm trying to get with the chairman of Rocky Mountain Power if I can on the 24th or 5th, and that's not confirmed yet.
Okay. Anyone else?
29th works. So.
Madam
Steve,
Chair.
Steve, are you still on?
I am, Madam Chairman.
Would you, what's your preference?
Could you repeat the question, please?
We're trying to figure out whether we do a Saturday or try and squeeze it into a weekday for a retreat at the end of March.
I'm fairly flexible. My teaching days are all day Tuesdays and all day Thursdays.
Okay.
So besides those days, I can usually make accommodations.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, Elaine, go ahead.
No, Madam Chair, I was just going to let you know that Dr. Buss said the 29th would work for him as well, just to throw that in there.
Madam Chair, not being a member of the board, I'm the least important person, but you seem to want my presence more often than not. So I'll just mention that I'm out of the country on the 22nd of March.
For one day or for?
What?
Well, I'm coming back on the 23rd, but I'm out from the 17th on to the, but if you're talking about a Saturday, then I figured I would mention that. But if it's during the week, that week of the 17th, but if you're,
Mackenzie, I was going to say you're quite the jet setter, you know?
well, it's my wife's birthday that week and we're taking an impromptu trip. So
For you.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, John.
The 29th is the traditional day when we celebrate that my mother gave birth to her second most favorite son. And so, you know, I'll just put that out there.
Okay.
Birthday cake.
John, do you have stuff to work from? John and Elaine?
Yeah, I'd love to nail down a date. If I'm hearing everybody correctly, Madam Chair, it sounds like March 29th works for most people. Am I correct with a birthday caveat? I'll bring you cupcakes. You
If,
can do it.
if I'm the only one on the 24th, I could try to move that meeting to the 25th. I've got both those days slated. I could probably confirm that by the end of the week.
Okay.
I don't know where everybody else is on that.
Let me, Madam Chair, let me ask in the negative. If it were scheduled for the 24th, who does that present a problem for? Who's saying I can't do that? Okay, Mackenzie.
I also have an office-wide training that is more or less mandatory. If you scheduled it, I could make it. I would just have to disappoint some people.
Yeah, and I love hearing from you and would want you included. I'm looking through the agenda. I don't see any at this point anything that legally we would need to consult with you on for this. It's more mission, vision, things like that. So I think that would be okay. Oh, Elaine is saying Doug can't do weekdays. Doug, that would be a problem if we did the middle of the week one, wouldn't it? Doug still there?
Cindy, what about you?
Yeah, Cindy, what's best for you?
It's just gonna depend. It's too far for me to make that commitment, unfortunately. I'm sorry. So
You were the last birthday problem.
yes,
Birthday
as last birthday problem. Yep.
Yeah,
But
not problem.
No.
Yeah.
yeah, no, I know what you mean, but it'll just depend what's happening with court hearings and, you know, like I practice law full time now, so my schedule's a little bit tighter than it used to be. So, but I'll do my very best. I don't want to be the holdout if you guys need to move on without me. I have every confidence between Fred and John and our chairman that, you know, I can get caught up pretty quickly. So I sure don't want to be the fly in the ointment for anybody, but I'll do my very best.
Okay. Happy belated birthday, by the way. Then are we all okay? If I say the 29th, does that sound like something everybody can work around? Why don't you give me a thumbs up? I like that. Give me a thumbs up if that's going to work for you. Okay. I think we've got that set.
I don't know whose thumb is floating up here on the screen, but
That's my thumb. Didn't I just get asked to do a thumbs up? I did a thumbs up.
Okay.
Do we know roughly what time that meeting would start? It would be morning, just the hotels and stuff.
Yeah, Fred, it would be, we were thinking about a starting time of 8 a.m. and then ending around 4 p.m. Would that work for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And please confirm the location.
It's going to be at LCCC.
Okay.
Room at LCCC. Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. And then, Elaine, can we put up the agenda? And I want to just go over this, and then if you guys have any input, we're really kind of to the point where we're zeroing down and preparing, you know, further preparing this. So I'd love to know if you have any input before we work further on this.
Madam Chair, Mr. Waller, give me just 1 second. I'm trying to find it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I think what the attempt to do here is to blend the traditional process of establishing a mission and the like, as well as strategic goals with some of the upcoming work that we have so that the two of them are sort of meshed together. Is that appropriate, John?
That's exactly right. Couldn't have said it better.
Madam Chair, are you able to see the agenda now? For the draft agenda for the board retreat?
We
No,
see
all I
that.
see is the table is your inbox or whatever. There you go.
No, that's not the one. It's a different one. It's the one we worked on the other day. Well, I'll just go over it. You can close that. Just, to brief here, mission and vision work, of course, as Madam Chair pointed out, that would be the bulk of the meeting. We would get a mission statement and vision statement, and they have a process they've worked through with other groups, boards that we would try to arrive at that. We felt like it was really important that we did a legislative update. I know it's a look back because this will be the session will be over, but my thinking is I think it's really important that we go through and say these are things that have passed and this would be an impact to our work, and that and be very inclusive with that. Some, as I mentioned before, could be very minimal. Some could be very impactful. I wanted us to talk a little bit about board function and best practices for boards. A discussion of the roles and responsibilities. We talked about that at length. We would send that out to you prior to the meeting, and then gather input about that. And are we all in agreement about the different roles and responsibilities? We would begin work on a strategic plan. Those are difficult. That's difficult work, always has been. But we're just talking 6 months out. In 6 months, where would we want to be with the strategic plan? Talk a little bit about a 2025 calendar. One thing that became really apparent to me in this training on Saturday is that as soon as possible, I want to get something out to the schools to say, this is when we'll be monitoring, this is what we'll be monitoring, this is what to be prepared for, so that we can make visits and make that time really well spent and have them prepared for that. So that's the meat of the agenda. Questions or comments or anything, guys? Yeah.
Does anybody? Oh, Cindy, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Gosh, that looks so much better than where we were. So thank you guys for revising this compared to where we were. I love the calendar item because I really think it would be good, John and Elaine, not only to have a calendar for the school, but a calendar for us. So we know, like, do you recall last year how we had some last minute grant things that nobody knew about to the last second, and then we had to have a special meeting. And like if we're just able to kind of take a holistic view so everyone can be organized and be forward looking as opposed to kind of pants on fire emergency, that's where I think I'd like to be as a member of this board, that we're ahead of the curve as opposed to feeling behind the curve. So thank you for that.
Great input.
Elaine, can you scroll down a little bit? Cindy, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I almost wonder if the calendar is too late in the meeting. If it shouldn't really precede some of the strategic plan work and setting goals.
I agree, Madam Chairman. I mean, yes, I definitely think we need to have a strategic plan, but we need to know what it is we need to be doing next week before we can look about what we're doing next year in the next 3 years. So I think I appreciate and welcome that suggestion. And just again, is another example of, your experience is so helpful for us as a board to really help us prioritize as we continue to build this airplane in flight. So thank you for that.
No, Madam Chair, I totally agree with that. And that could really guide our discussion, because once you see this is what we're going to have to do in July, we that really has to do with the strategic plan. So good. I will move that up. I think that's a great idea.
Fred?
Yeah.
John, can you send this out to people maybe so that?
Yeah, let me get it cleaned up here. Yes, I can.
Sorry, Fred. I'm sorry, Fred. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that last idea was an excellent one. I think because my sense is looking at a strategic plan in the next 6 months to me is a tactical endeavor. And what you just did, I think, straightens that out. But maybe I always think about strategic plans that begin with the end in mind. So my thought would be that we would, if we look at that short-term 6-month calendar, very tactical, and then we at least get to the end with brainstorming a little bit about where we really want to be down the road. And if we can then come up with strategic direction, sorry. That would be fantastic, but even if we can leave that meeting with a vision concept of where we think we want to be 3-5 years down the road, I think that'd be pretty cool.
Great. That's really good input. I like that.
Thank you.
Okay.
So,
Madam Chair,
is that Doug? Doug, go ahead.
yes. Madam Chair, I have to go in 5 minutes. I don't want to destroy the quorum, but I don't have any choice.
We're good. Thank you. And I hope things are okay with, it sounds like your pup is going to the doctor, so I hope things work out okay. Any other comments on this? All right, next item. This is for Steve. Change of future regularly scheduled meetings. Does anyone have an issue with our meetings being on Wednesday from 3 until 5 instead of Thursday? I guess not.
Madam Chairman,
Fred?
Madam Chairman, or I'm sorry, go ahead, Fred. Fred's muted.
Fred, you're muted.
It was the first time I muted myself too, sorry. Madam Chair, would that be the first Wednesday? Usually somebody else mutes me. Would it be the first Wednesday of every month then?
That's up to us. What would you like it to be?
And
That would
again,
work.
apologies all, you know, I teach full days on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I have 3 classes each day. And unfortunately, my final class is 2:45 to 4, which, you know, makes it almost impossible for me to attend the beginning parts of these meetings. So apologies if I'm causing trouble for others.
No apologies necessary.
Glad
None.
you're doing this.
John Masters, did you have a comment?
Yes, Madam Chairman. I anticipate the work of the Finance Committee needs to mesh with the meeting time so that you can get from the Finance Committee current information. So whether it's if we're going to meet on the first Wednesday or the second Wednesday or the third Wednesday, whatever that is, keep in mind that some of these committees, of which Finance Committee is one, might need to live according to this schedule. So that, for example, if there are vouchers that we need to review and approve and submit to the board for consideration, we'd want to do that in a way that they got paid timely.
I appreciate that, John. I would appreciate you not use the word approve. Because
Well, I
that
think these
indicates you're taking action in that meeting, which
Oh, no. We would be recommending for the board to approve.
recommend I get, but
Yeah, no. Yeah, no doubt of that. Thank you, ma'am.
so if we meet on the first, then you could meet on the second or third or fourth on Wednesday or whatever.
But if we did that, your report from us would essentially be 3 weeks after we met, as opposed to 1 week after we met.
You pick when, you know. So would you prefer we meet on the second Wednesday?
Well, I think that gives us a chance to receive information from the department that's at the month end, process it, and make a recommendation to the board. And that might not be true because the first Wednesday could be the first day of the month, whereas the second Wednesday would always give us at least a few days if we, and I don't know what the Finance Committee will do, but you know, we could act accordingly. So I just throw that out there, and there may be other committees, for example, the new committee on application might have similar concerns.
Well, I don't think we'll be meeting nearly as regularly. This is certainly going to be an ad hoc committee. But you're right, and so the Trent's commitment to us is to have the information on the first of the month. So perhaps the second Wednesday would be a better alternative, John Waller.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That's what I was just going to, if we could meet on the first week and then the whole board meets on the second week, I think that's a good.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry, but I need to sign off.
All right, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
You bet.
I think we just lost our quorum, Madam Chairman.
That's okay. We just won't be able to vote on
Yeah.
adjourning. So that means we're together forever.
Um, Madam Chair, if I might, in order to change your regular meetings, you would need to pass essentially a resolution which amounts to a motion and a vote to establish your new regular meeting time. You don't necessarily need to do that now since you don't have a quorum. You could just consider your next meeting at this new date and time to be a special meeting, and then go ahead and make that modification through the proper process then. But I
Okay.
just wanted to plant that procedural hiccup.
Again, apologies, everybody.
No. So
No, we're happy here.
Is Cindy still on?
I don't believe so. Madam Chairman,
Yes.
do we need to then cancel our regular scheduled meeting for next week and give notice of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's a good point.
All right. Thank you.
Well, at this point in time, I am going to open it up for any public comment. Do we have any public comment?
Madam Chair, it doesn't look like anyone is commenting at this time.
I will make one public comment. I appreciate Mr. Winger reaching out to John and seeking help when needed, because that's what he's here for. So thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chairman, if
With
I may.
that, yes.
I appreciate the good work John Waller is doing for us, and particularly how he's keeping us informed on the legislation, and that is a very useful, and I hope that he's able to continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much.
Here.
Yeah.
I'd ask for a motion to adjourn, but we don't have a quorum, so I guess we're adjourned.
Actually, you don't need a motion, or you can just adjourn, ma'am.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you,
Have a great
everybody.
finish to your week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Good meeting. Thank you.
Adios,
Bye.
everyone.
All right.